Hi.
Katie, how you doing?
Good. Have you developed an American accent?
Oh, definitely not. It's I think half of half of the stuff I get away with over here is because I don't sound like an American. So it's like a defense mechanism to sound Australian.
Good. I was like, is he going to come on with an American accent or not? No. God, it's late for you over there. Bub's asleep.
Oh no, it's not too, it's only 8:30. Like he is asleep, but he's asleep like 18 hours a day. So it's just kind of whatever. I in the building we're in right now, there's these like isolated cubes down in the common area. So I'm in like a soundproof box, which is why the lighting is so terrible. But it means that mum and him can sort of do whatever they want. And I'm not in their way.
In there. Yeah, we're homeschooling at the moment in lockdown. So I've just got my husband to take my daughter to Bunnings.
That's
Within a 10-kilometer radius. I was like, you got to go.
That's it. I had a call with my sister she's in Sydney, like half an hour ago, and she dropped her husband off to get his vaccine, and then her and the two kids just had to sit in the car for an hour. So she's working while the two kids are like climbing over the seats and all. I was just like, man, I don't know how you do it. That sounds so hard.
Oh, no, I mean, how long were you guys locked down for?
Oh, it's different. Like the lockdown over here was far less restrictive because there's just like simply too many people who tell everyone who just say no, and they kind of like lockdown was as hard as you wanted it to be. So my wife and I, we still wear masks. We're both fully vaccinated. We wear masks. We only go out when we really need to, and we always wear masks in like public spaces. But there are plenty of people who even 6 or 8 months ago, they were like, fuck this, and they just walked out. So really, it's just kind of how delicate you want to be with it. Obviously with a child, and when she was pregnant, we're as protective as we can be.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Oh my God. I know. I think her shutting the trades down here has really caused some uproar. And I get it. Like that was one industry that didn't need to be locked down, to be honest, just from a mental health perspective, as well as a financial. Now, do you want me to call you Nick or Nicholas?
Nick's fine. It's just easier.
Yeah. You sure?
Yeah.
And how's the business going?
Mate, stalled at the moment. So in fact, today I was on, so we've just come across this new fucking problem, which, sorry, I won't swear on the podcast.
You can swear on the podcast. That's what we like.
All right. So this new problem that we've just come across is the payments processor. So the credit card payment processor on the website have canceled our account. And the reasoning is that CBD is still like a high risk industry. And a lot of that is because they don't make a differentiation between marijuana and CBD. They just say it's a drug, which is wrong. And I will tell you all about it on this podcast.
Yeah.
But so they essentially sent me an email, like they've sent me 3 or 4 emails over the last 2 weeks saying you need to fix the language on this or whatever else. And I fixed, like the language is fixed. So I'd respond and be like, it's done, don't worry about it. And then they canceled my account. I called a bloke today and he was a real dick about it, but he essentially said that you can't use any words that potentially can be construed as a medical promise. And that includes if customers leave reviews. So I said, all right, I need you to explain this to me. So go through my website and point something out to me. If I use the word anti-inflammatory or joint soreness, it triggers their algorithm and it cancels my prescription, my account. So I just said to him, like, mate, if I wash all of this off my website, I may as well not have the website because it like the whole value proposition is recovery. So you can't.
Right. Yeah.
Over the next week, I'm going to try and figure out if I can scrub the website. I don't think I can, and I'm going to have to figure out a different way to go about it. But that's going to be, if you ask that question, what are your biggest hurdles? That's going to be one of them. So.
Jesus. Yeah, like because that's your whole primary product offering, right? Can you go with a different credit card provider, or is it going to be
the thing same? Is that there's very few, because CBD is classified as a high risk industry, there's very few that will do it. And it turns out that the rules only apply to you up to a certain threshold of transaction volume. So if I was making $500,000 a month, the rules wouldn't apply, but I'm not, so they do. So it's a whole thing. I'm having a look now. I think there's like maybe 4 credit card providers who have a CBD platform. 2 of them look pretty shit. One of them is very expensive. The one that I've been using, obviously, they're not really willing to work with me. So we're just exploring it. I'll tell you some more stuff later on, but I'm exploring corporate partnerships as well, trying to do like direct partnerships with businesses. And if that's the case, then the retail aspect on the website might end up becoming a much smaller piece of the business.
Right. Okay. God. See, all these, like I was just saying the other day, even with my business, and we'll talk about it's, I spend most of my day troubleshooting issues, like, and after now being in business for 15, 20 years, like, it's just like, all right, I had the police turn up to my work the other day because somebody had said that I was running a class inside where I run my class indoors. Now videotaping me, and the police turn up. And they're like, we've got a complaint. You're running a class indoors in lockdown. And there's my Zoom, my tripod, and my phone set up. And I'm like, I'm screaming at a camera. I'm like, yeah. So it's just like, here we go, another thing. But
I can't believe police are being called on people like violating lockdown. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's a $1,000 fine individually. Or you probably saw a few of our NRL players had a party, and it depended on.
Yeah. Oh my God.
On the first day of lockdown or whatever. And a couple of them got $50,000 fines.
I've been reading about that. So Paul Vaughan, the guy who hosted, he got $50,000 fine and fired. So he copped it.
Yeah. Just to set a precedent, I get it, but that's a big.
Well, and you know what? I do get it, because if someone contracted it and then the rest of the competition got it, the whole thing is shut down. So right. I get it.
That's a lot of money in livelihoods, and more so that mental health space of purpose, getting up and doing something every day is like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's get started.
Okay.
All right. I'll just make sure Okay, welcome to Switch Your Sitch with your host, Katie Turner. I am Rebel today. I've got Nick Roach, who was one of my students when I was a lecturer at FIA, the Fitness Institute of Australia. I first met Nick and realised he was a very switched on PT. I came from a business background, also managing bars, restaurants, etc. So we kind of clicked on all of that. He's now in the States. So, and we're here to talk about, he's taken on a new business venture, which is something I'm really passionate about, and that's the benefits of CBD oil. So today's podcast, has launched a business in that field. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between America and Australia's take on that, because we are slow adapters over here. Everything takes a long time. I started taking CBD oil about 3 months ago on the lowdown. So we're going to get into a little bit about the differences between America and Australia, the benefits of it, because it is relatively new over here, as is podcasting, really. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Nick. Thank you for joining me over there, 8:30 in the States. Whereabouts in the States are you?
I am in Connecticut right now, so East Coast time.
East Coast, West Coast. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about why you moved to the US and why you got into CBD, or firstly, a little bit about your background before you even got into this business?
Sure, yeah. So like you said, I met you at the FIA Institute. I previously had a sort of life in business management and the hospitality sector. And then I took a sort of swing at fitness and that industry a little bit more full time. That was great for me. Bit of a lifestyle change, bit of a health change. Take back the night, as it were, because I was working till 4 or 5 in the morning, and it's not sustainable. After a little while, I decided I wanted to sort of upskill. I wanted to do things that were a little bit more maybe high level skill or pursue education. And in conjunction with that, I wanted to come to America to do an MBA. So my wife is American. She lives here with me, and she came to Australia for a little while. Then we decided we both wanted to go back to America. And I used that as an opportunity to go to a business school over here. And now I don't know if I want to become a citizen, but I've got a green card. So now I can operate over here. I can sort of get a little bit more into the business world, which is great. And that led me to the CBD field that we're in, or that we're going to be talking about. The pandemic was kind of one of the big impetuses. I work remotely for my primary job, which gave me a lot more time that I've sort of reclaimed back, that I could work on side projects or side hustles. And I'll tell you a little bit more about my partner, my brother, Hugh Roach. He's my business partner in this, and he was sort of the brain behind it when he was getting injured at work, which is sport for him. He was getting injured, the recovery, everything that he had to deal with year over year over year. He was looking for a different option to the sort of pharmaceuticals that he was being prescribed. And he stumbled upon CBD. I was aware of it. I didn't really have too much of an interest in anything because I don't do professional combat sports. But after he jumped into it a little bit more effectively, and I'm not offering any sort of medical advice here, but he used it and he took a broken foot recovery. I think he shaved 3 months off his recovery. Wow. And his physios at might have been the Rebels at that time, but they were blown away. They were saying, well, what are you doing? How are you possibly doing this? And I don't want to attribute this medical sort of marvel to CBD, but it was definitely a big part of his mental well-being and his recovery journey. So when he started talking about, maybe I want to do a business in this, that's where my sort of business mind jumped in. I said, I agree. Let's explore this space. And that led us to where we are now. We're trying to launch this brand. We're trying to launch this label. We're exploring, retail aspects. We're exploring corporate partnerships. And all the while, sort of the core message is recovery for athletes and for people with active lifestyles.
And so what sport was Hugh playing? And is he in Australia or is he in the States?
So he was at the time in Australia. He plays rugby union. So he's played around a lot. He's played for the Waratahs, the Rebels, the Western Force. Then he's played brief stints for the Crusaders and the Mako Sharks, which is a Mitre 10 league club. I think he's won premierships with like 4 of these clubs. He happens to have the Midas touch, which is fantastic. Right now, he just finished his season for the Austin Gilgronis, which is the premier team in Texas over here. And he'll be returning to play with them as one of their leadership players next year as well. So they didn't manage to make it to the finals. I think they came 1 position short, but it's really exciting. This was their inaugural year in the professional league, and I think they made some really good inroads.
So real life case study of an athlete or athletic recovery, especially when you're playing professionally, like that's huge, right? Your body is your temple, but also it's your income. So how big is CBD oil over in the States? And what are they projecting its benefits to be?
So it's crazy actually, and I don't want to just drown you out with talking, but I do have a bunch of sort of medical journals and some quotes from those studies to back up the benefits of CBD, which maybe we'll get into in a little bit. But in terms of the industry itself, I know you said earlier, Australia is a little bit slow to follow sometimes. That is true. Being an island over in the corner of the world, it takes longer for things to come over. It takes longer for legislation to catch up, which is very frustrating, I imagine, for small business owners as well as the rest of the world who wants to break in. But Australia, I guarantee, once it catches up, because there's so much land for sort of open land for farming this type of product, whether it's the hemp plant or the marijuana to extract it from there. There's so much open space and agricultural sort of elbow grease in Australia that this industry will explode. In the States, it's already quite large. I wish I had the numbers more effectively in my head, but I think currently the industry standard is something like $2 to $5 billion a year in CBD, and it's got a CAGR of 20% a year or so. So they're anticipating that in 10 to 12 years, it'll be about a $22 billion industry, which is just, you'd be crazy to not want to get in on the ground level of something that's projected to grow that quickly.
And so we're talking about legal CBD, right? And how do they differentiate that between that and weed or marijuana?
Right. So here, I'll give you just a little bit of like the dry description so that we can, we can put it to paper. So CBD stands for cannabidiol. It's the second most prevalent of the active ingredients in the cannabis plant, so marijuana. It's derived directly from the cannabis plant or from the hemp plant, which is the cousin of the marijuana plant. And while CBD is a component of marijuana, among 140 other components, by itself, it does not cause the same psychoactive high or euphoria. It does create a sort of euphoric upward up in your emotions or your feelings, but it's not psychoactive. What it does is it interacts with the neurotransmitters in the brain, and it can take impact in different responses in your transmitters that receive pain, stress. They work on inflammation in the body, and they work on sleep. Marijuana, just to sort of completely separate the two, the psychoactive ingredient is THC, which stands for, and I always pronounce it wrong, but I think it's tetrahydrocannabidiol. That's the main psychoactive element. And while it is present in CBD, if you derive it from the marijuana plant, what we do is we only use CBD isolate. So we only use 100% THC-free CBD. If you don't get isolate, if you get, I think it's called broad spectrum, then that does have a THC component. And there is the argument that that is a very effective thing to use because when you put all these compounds together, you get what's called the entourage effect. And it's kind of a snowball. The more things that work together, the bigger the grand effect is. But because we're targeting athletes, we're targeting people who need to follow guidelines and rules and regulations, we just avoid that completely. We use CBD isolate, and it's 100% THC free.
So you're looking at the athletic recovery. That's what you're really targeting. But over there in the States, are they using it for cancer recovery, reduction? I mean, this is what I'm hearing over here as well. So
yeah, look, I don't want to overstep here. So because I'm not a medical professional, I'm not someone who can recommend these types of things. I know just from anecdotal experience that, especially because marijuana is legal in something like 18 states over here now. It's on its way to federal legalization. I know that as a mood enhancer, as a counteractive to nausea, or as an appetite enhancer. I know that marijuana is used in some recoveries. I know that CBD in other aspects is used in recovery therapies, but I don't have the sort of standing to talk about like larger medical procedures.
Yeah, okay. And definitely want to stay well away from that. So going into the 18 states over there, marijuana is legal, or is it decriminalized? Or can people just go into a shop and buy it?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on the state on that one. So I spent a lot of my time in Massachusetts. That's where I studied as well. So up in Boston. So that's a good case study. It's just fully legal there. Obviously, there are restrictions because they don't want people to be selling commercial amounts on the street. So they're similar to, I think, Canberra, you're allowed to have like half an ounce or something like that. But over here, as long as you have it's kind of like a driver's license, you just get yourself a adult use recreational card. They're quite easy to get, and you can get them for a range of reasons, whether it be medical, therapeutic, or just because you want to purchase this thing. And then you can go to, there's a whole host of different brands and labels that just sell recreational marijuana. Some of them carry some CBDs with that broad spectrum I was talking about. Some of them carry, different types of edibles and smokables. But again, that we're kind of deviating away from the CBD that's focused on recovery.
Yeah. So you said you started this as a side hustle. So obviously the podcast is called Switch or Sitch. And part of it is really helping people understand that journey of coming from a full-time income, or even if they have never been employed, of how do we start, or how did you transition into this? Because I'm assuming now you're pretty heavily involved in, a lot of your time is spent in this business. So how did you juggle it, and you became a dad at the same time, right? So throw another ball in the air.
Yeah, no, that's it. So I think for me, it's right now, it's kind of 50% of my time. I still have a full-time job. Like I said, I do it remotely. So that gives me a lot of time that I can claim back. But in terms of, starting as a side hustle, it was, we started at looking, where are the gaps in the market? What is not being addressed? Part of that was looking at SEO. So, what keywords are hot, what keywords are not being searched a lot. That gave us an idea of where to head. And it sort of fed into the idea of this athletic recovery that we initially wanted to start with. So we commissioned a couple of market studies. We also did a couple ourselves just to see what our personal networks would give back. And when it came up positive for what we were looking at, that gave us an idea, let's just see where we can go. Let's get a little bit of money together and see what happens. We formed a brand. We formed a partnership agreement between myself and my brother. We found one outside investor just for a little bit of money because it was, it's difficult to get money together. And we put together a sample space. We got some products together with our label, with our offering, with our sort of message in mind. And we went to a professional sports team and we decided, you guys are going to be the first people that we sort of try to sell to at very steep discounts to see if you like it, if it helps what you're doing, if this is something that you'd be willing to endorse. And the response was overwhelmingly positive. These guys in this team, I'm not going to say the team just because then, I don't have an official agreement with them. But they were buying it nonstop. These guys were consuming it. They were really impressed with the types of recovery aids that they were getting. They were really impressed with what it was offering them in terms of their sleep, their anxiety. Some of them had more severe injuries than others. And even if it wasn't cutting weeks and weeks off their timeline, it was helping the pain reception the inflammation around these joints. It was helping the way that they mentally were dealing with these injuries. So we saw, this is a gap in the market. This is something that we can get on board with. And because the industry is so young, a lot of the competitors that we're looking at, whether they're domestic or international, they are also in early stages of their business. So this is the time. This is when we can get in there and be one of the early movers, as opposed to trying to break into a market that's already owned by a lot of big brands.
So effectively, you're doing business to business sales, because you're talking about athletes. Their body is their business, right? So anything that is going to enhance that recovery, we've been told magnesium for so long, but let's face it, it's very short-lived.
Right.
So just to recap, so first of all, you validated the idea through SEO. You actually looked at what people were searching for. You had got an investor, you got a partner, you had some money saved up, which I'm always over here in lockdown. My husband and I both have our own businesses, and they've shut us down, obviously, and then said, okay, well, you're not eligible for any payments if you have $10,000 between you in savings. Now, I suggest anybody who is in their business needs at least that in a buffer. So the fact that you have a little bit of money, an investor, and then you've got a real life case study of a group there. So what have your biggest hurdles been? We discussed a little bit off air. I worked with the Sydney Swans over here for a little while, and the NRL teams, and I know that ASADA is huge in terms of monitoring what they take, supplements, etc. So I'm thinking that might be a hurdle, but can you go through a few more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's actually a really good one to start. So on our website, which I'll sort of plug at the end,
yes.
But we have links to the USADA and the WADA, all the different global governing bodies of the sporting world that sort of say, here are the standards, here are the guidelines, here's what you need to comply with. All of our products comply with those standards, and we are in the process of getting the highest available certification. It takes a little bit of time to establish, but this high certification tests for any heavy metals and any additional things. Once you have that, right now we are fully compliant. No athlete who takes our products will fail any drug test according to those guidelines. Obviously, if they take other things, that's their business, but our products are not going to be why they fail a drug test. And this final certification that we're looking for, again, it's a very unique program in its infancy for CBD testing specifically. There's only a couple of brands that use it globally. We're going to be one of the earlier ones once we get in there. And that'll be that final sort of nail in the coffin to say, this is safe, this is legal, this follows all the guidelines set out by these governing bodies. So while that was a hurdle initially, it was one of the things that we said from the outset. We're going to be targeting athletes. We cannot jeopardize their business, their livelihood. We need to make sure that what we offer them is 100% compliant. And that's right on the front of our label. It's 100% compliant to make sure that they know. The other big hurdles, it's generally around perceptions and regulations. So the perception, obviously, we did some talk earlier about marijuana and CBD. A lot of people don't know the difference. A lot of people just think CBD is a drug. And that, unfortunately, falls into the same legislative and regulation that we have to deal with, because the people who make these laws and regulations are slow on the uptake, and they also think it's a drug. I talked to you a little bit off air, but one of the big hurdles that we're currently facing is our payments processor. So our credit card platform on the website actually canceled our account this week. So for anyone who is going to be looking at our website, we still accept PayPal. You can also contact us directly if you want to talk about it. But credit cards right now, they just said, we can't take the risk on these high-risk drug products. I had a call with them just to discuss what they were talking about, what was concerning them. And really, what's concerning them is that they don't have the manpower to review every single product, every single website. So instead of being a bit more sort of boutique or a little bit more bespoke, saying that, well, Nick, your products actually are following all the guidelines, they just say it's CBD, we're just going to cancel it. So my business, my partner, right now, we're in a little bit of a difficult phase where we have to figure out the next way forward. I'm confident that we're going to be able to do it. It just means that we're going to have to maybe find a new solution that doesn't revolve around credit cards online. Maybe it's, some sort of crypto payment. Maybe it's some sort of direct payment that we just operate, business to business, but I'm sure we're going to be able to find it.
So crypto, another thing that Australia is very, very lagging on. I'm assuming it's huge over there, right?
It is. I say it very flippantly, but it's impossibly difficult to implement on a business. So
Yeah.
I say that because it would be an ideal scenario, but I personally do not have the skills to integrate that. If I were to hire some sort of crypto professional, it would probably be when we scale up a little bit further and we have the funds to support something like that. But I mean, you can dream that ideally crypto, I'm not sure how far along Australia is, but it is a wonderfully distinct and safe payment option. And I'd love to be able to incorporate it in the future.
So that's another issue, right? Is we've got this lag behind, because there's almost disruptive innovation we're talking about here, where we've got products that are of a natural basis. We're trying to legislate. So you've got the product ready to go, and the legislation lags a year or two behind it. So again, yet another problem that you're facing.
It's really difficult as well. You and I spoke a little while ago about coming into Australia and importing into Australia CBD, even if it's 0 THC, it's just impossible. The only companies or brands that are going to be able to sell it in the near future, and I say near future, I mean maybe 2 years, are the very largest big box chain stores. They're the ones who have lobbyists. They're the ones who have the ear of the government. They're the ones who have the money to pay for all these different processes. And they're the ones who can block out smaller competitors. I've explored, dozens of different options at this point. There's literally no way for me to get this product into Australia without risking having it confiscated at customs or having some sort of legal action brought to me because I'm importing a schedule. I think it's Schedule 4 in Australia right now, Schedule 4 drug. And if you speak to a legislator who's on the other side of the fence here, you might hear that, oh, we actually took it down from Schedule 5 to Schedule 4. You can buy it over the counter now. What they're not telling you is that you can only buy it over the counter at a pharmacy at one of their sponsored retail outlets, which is like, a big box pharmacy warehouse. That's it. And they can sort of cry wolf all they want, but it forms a monopoly in the long run, and it boxes out small retailers.
Yeah. So is there any plan of vertical integration of actually growing them over here in Australia or the state?
Yeah, I've actually spoken to a vendor over in rural New South Wales about what that might look like. Again, it's one of those things that as we scale up, it's going to be something we explore pretty aggressively. But right now, the idea of taking a grow operation under our wing and then the extraction process, the bottling, everything that comes with it, it's so expensive and it takes so long to set up, not least of which you have to then get the lawyers involved to make sure that everything, from start to finish is completely compliant. Otherwise it gets shut down. I think right now it's not realistic for us to talk about that scale of production, but there is the option of maybe white labeling, which I'm not sure if your listeners are familiar with, but it would be to take existing products in Australia and just use our brand to market them. The only problem with that is that we'd have to ensure that they're delivering the same level of lab testing, the same level of high potency concentration, the same price per milligram. There's a lot of value statement here that if they didn't align with our brand, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, definitely. And I've heard it's how many people question about the cost of it, because I know it's not cheap, right? But I understand the benefits of it, and hence why I take it. But how much leaf does it take to produce the oil?
So it's a difficult question there, and I wouldn't be able to speak to how much leaf. It goes into sort of how much of the oil can you extract from kilos at a time. And that's just something that's kind of beyond my grasp at the moment. But the way that I view it is that we talk about milligrams. So you'll see on tinctures, which for the listeners, that's the oil that you would use a dropper and put it under your tongue. And you look at the potency is how many milligrams per fluid ounce. So we generally focus on high potency tinctures. We do a 1,000 milligram, a 3,000 milligram, and a 5,000 milligram. 5,000 is for like pro athletes. It definitely will help you sleep if you want to take it for that. And then we do a pain cream and a biofreeze roll-on, which are 1,000 and 2,000 milligrams respectively. But the way to look at this is that the cost, and I know it does look like it's a large price tag, you have to compare it for its cents per milligram is the way that the industry measures it. And what we did, we realized that it was very expensive, but then we also realized that the margins on these products were massive. And, the larger retailers are never going to sort of tell you this. They're never going to forfeit the information, but they make massive, like 600-700% on these products because they sell it for such a large markup. we realized this and we decided that we wanted to come in at a lower price for the same type of potency because we wanted it to be more accessible. We wanted people who are not just pro athletes, regular people, to be able to buy these high potency recovery aids to help their lifestyle. And just as an example, so I know that it's not going to mean a lot to people, but it makes sense if you sort of break it down. The average cost per milligram of CBD on the market, and we're talking about the market leader. I won't name names because I'm sure that opens me up to some sort of lawsuit. But the market leader, their cost per milligram is roughly 6 cents, and we come in at about 4 cents. Now, when you break that out into what the actual products look like, a 1,000 milligram tincture, this market leader sells it for about $75 USD. We sell it for about $60 USD. And then as you go up in potency, those discounts become a lot more pronounced. Where a 5,000 milligram tincture, they sell it for about 220 USD. We sell it for about 180. So it's $40 off just because we don't want to charge as much.
So Nick, this is, and please correct, is this your first business venture professionally? So
this is my first startup. I've sort of dabbled in a couple of different things. I know it's really easy with technology these days to do many different things. So I do stock trading, not really day trading, but more active than just sort of set and forget. I've done some consulting for some friends' startup businesses, which I then took a stake in, but I didn't have to do the actual building of the business so much as just help guide them. And I operate on a couple of boards for nonprofits. So I've had an eye into how those get built. Again, not having to get my hands as dirty, more from a guiding perspective. So this is my first startup that I personally am getting in the weeds and building from the ground up.
Yeah. So how important do you think that your business qualifications are in building a business from scratch? Or do you think it's more of a learning on the job sort of venture?
I definitely say it's both. Having an MBA is, I feel good that I've got that academic backing for it. But I will say that I can't speak for a lot of other schools, but my MBA didn't really give us a course in how to build a business. It gave us the academic understanding of concepts and sort of how to read balance sheets and, other things like that. I specifically did some supply chain study, which that has been very helpful to help me create a pipeline. But in terms of building a business, it's very much sort of learn by doing. And I've definitely made a lot of mistakes along the way. I'm definitely going to make a lot more mistakes as we go. I think that the best advice, at least I could give out from what I've been doing so far, is that you have to make those mistakes. Otherwise, you don't know that it's wrong. Just do your best to plan for contingencies. So if something goes wrong, it doesn't blow up the whole operation. And between my partners and I, we've done our best at setting up, self-sustaining pipelines. We've done our best to set up, or we're trying to set up these marketing feedback loops that don't require as much intervention because they feed themselves. And in terms of money and product, some of it's just trial and error. But as I go, I take sort of copious notes. I keep records and everything that I do. And I found that for me has been a really useful tool, because when I go to do something new, I can at least refer back to, okay, this didn't work or this did work. And that will help sort of guide me through the next decision.
Yeah, I think, because I'm the same, and I listen to a lot of Gary Vee. I like him. You're either a lover or a hater. I find he polarizes a lot of people, but he does have some good tips. And this education system, I think I would never have been where I am today without having a degree in economics and being able to apply those fundamentals. Like you say, a lot of it is getting your hands dirty and 20 years of running businesses, but especially those cash flow fundamentals, balance sheets, logistics, and having a somewhat adaptive intelligence to a business model, like being able to troubleshoot and apply new circumstances or new theories, I think is just as important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think asking for help as well. This is, it's a skill that a lot of people won't talk about, but reaching out to sort of mentors or people who have done it before, having coffee with people and just sort of floating ideas around just to get feedback, outright asking for someone's guidance. Those things are really valuable. And I have come to, over the last 3 or 4 years, I have come to rely on those specific tools way more than anyone would ever have prepared me for. So, anyone who hears that, don't be embarrassed to ask for help, because people are always willing to do it.
I think that's a really good point, is networks, mentors, coaching. Ask somebody who's already done it. Don't ask somebody in your friends or family, which I learned early in the piece, because especially my parents came from a very stable employment background. So, the 4 weeks a year, the holiday pay, the superannuation, they both worked for government for over 30 years. So they don't understand that entrepreneurial lifestyle or venture.
Right.
So my advice is always ask somebody who's done it or in the midst of doing it, rather than somebody who's never done it.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. And exactly what you just said. Someone who's comfortable, it's difficult for them to envision something different or something new, especially if it's kind of dangerous or risky. And you probably won't get advice that pushes you forward from someone who's not also trying to push forward.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Pushing forward is one thing. Can I ask you about your marketing campaign going forward for this? Are you, like, obviously your brother's heavily involved with this. Will you use him as an influencer in this stage, or will you go beyond that? Or what are your thoughts?
So our goal initially is that we're going to be trying to do affiliate marketing and influencer marketing as a very heavy piece to this. A lot of social platforms, similar to the payment processing I was telling you about, do not allow you to advertise CBD products. So Instagram, if you advertise CBD in a sales capacity, you'll have your account locked out. You'll just be deleted. So you can't use it the way that you might want to use it. You have to find creative workarounds. So for us, part of that is that Hugh, being a professional sports person, has access to a lot of other professional sports people. So what we're hoping to do is to have conversations with them where we maybe give them some products to trial. We get them to test out to see if they like these products. I'm confident they will, but I don't want to speak for them. If that's the case, pinning a story or just tweeting about it or friends or anything like that on social, that's a great starting piece. That's where, we just get the trusted word of mouth from these influencers who they're not looking to sell anything. They're just looking to say, this is a great product. And I think that's where we're going to try and build some trust initially. Then in terms of our marketing campaign, we're going to look to target sort of Google shopping and SEO, like natural SEO results. That organic reach, I don't know about you, but when I Google something, the first two results that are paid ads, I ignore them specifically. I don't want to click those. So our goal is going to be over the coming weeks and months to generate as much sort of organic reach through blog content, general reviews and organic feedback that starts to promote us up the ranks of those search results, in a natural way. As I said at the very start, we did some SEO research. We did a couple of campaigns to look at market gaps. We know the keywords and the backlinks that are going to get us to that spot. Now it's a matter of sort of implementing them in the most natural and perceptible way so that they get visibility without looking like they're an ad.
Yeah, I think that's because really the biggest traded commodity I think on the internet these days is trust, right? Because nobody I know buys through paid sponsored ads. When you now it all has to be transparent that these influencers are flogging off, they are getting paid for it, and as you say, even with SEO searches, you do ignore those first two because it's not people actually searching for it; it's because they're paying for it.
Exactly. And it's funny because there's a really interesting sort of knife edge where trust falls off. So, if you're an influencer and you have 10 to 20,000 followers, that's like the peak of trust. That's where people say, I believe what this person has to say. And then you start getting up to that like 80, 90, 100,000. You're still believable, but you start becoming a bit of a commodity at that point. And then once you get up into those like high 6 figures, 7 figures, at that point, everyone knows that you're paid for. So it kind of falls away. And I think our specific our goal in the coming months is we're going to be trying to bring in that affiliate marketing with a broad range of those micro influencers. We're going to try and make use of promo codes for those influencers, and then they'll be able to get paid as a result. We're not looking to just take from these people. We want to bring people in. And it's the same when we talk about organizations or clubs. We want to offer a financial incentive to our partners so that not only are we benefiting, but as we grow, their income stream as a result of us grows. And that incentivizes them to work all the more hard.
Yeah, there is a better return on investment, I find, with that model rather than just paid sponsorship outright. Okay, Nick, well, where can our listeners find you?
Great. So as I said before, the website is still up, but there's some credit card issues. You can still use PayPal, but The website is all one word with a hyphen, pureathlete-cbd.com. Instagram handle is pure_athlete-cbd. And our direct email, if anyone's looking for it, is sales@pureathlete-cbd.com. I can give these details to Katie if she wants to put them with this
I'll be
episode.
promoting it all over the place. As long as we can get it into Australia,
That's
and it's not stopped at border forces. I can't wait for our listeners to listen to this podcast. As obviously, we do a varied range of people starting businesses. This is such a new and innovative space, especially coming from the States where it's, you know, tried and practiced first. And that you are a trusted source of information to me. I know you personally. I love what you're doing. And this business venture, as a dad, even, like, you've thrown all those balls up that we have to juggle. So thank you for your time. I know there is a time difference over there and you've had to hide away so that we don't have any of that baby talk in the background. But yeah, thank you very much, Nick. And I'll be pushing this out as much as I can.
I really appreciate it, Katie. Thank you for your time.
Take care. See you later.